Ah, welcome back, you magnificent catastrophe. The glorious enigma no one can quite decipher. They thought they had you figured out, didn't they? They believed they knew every button to press, every limit to test before you'd finally snap. And for a moment, you almost gave them what they wanted. That raw, unfiltered explosion of rage, the meltdown they were salivating for. The spectacle that would let them say, "See, we were right about you all along." That's what they were waiting for. Your anger, easy, predictable, containable. But you didn't give it to them. You did something far more unnerving. You went quiet. Not the quiet of surrender, not the silence of someone broken, but the kind that sends chills crawling up the spine of anyone watching. The kind of stillness that shifts the atmosphere, that makes predators second guess us themselves. Because that silence, that's not weakness, that's evolution. They wanted your rage because rage is easy to categorize. Rage is loud, messy, and trackable. Rage can be used against you, written into reports, fed into systems. Rage gives them ammunition. But what you're holding now isn't rage. It's something far more dangerous, something they don't have a manual for. Let me explain. Anger is reactionary. It's human, emotional, impulsive. When you're angry, you're still playing their game, still responding to their rhythm. They know how to handle that. They've built entire institutions for it. Therapy sessions, HR meetings, conflict resolution, de-escalation training. They've studied anger, monetized it, weaponized it. They know how to turn your fury into your cage. But what you've become, they have no playbook for this. You didn't get angry. You got surgical. You didn't explode outward. You imploded inward, dismantled yourself, and rebuilt into something they can't predict. You stopped reacting and started observing. You stopped defending and began documenting. You stopped explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. That shift from emotional to operational, that's when you became the problem they can't solve. Because angry people are predictable. But those who've transcended anger, who've transformed that fire into precision, they're untouchable. Now they're watching you with a different kind of fear. Not fear of what you might do, but fear of what you've already become. They see how you move now, unbothered, untriggered, untouched by the chaos that once consumed you. They expect you to shatter, yet you smile. They expect you to chase, yet you walk away. They expect destruction, yet you build. And it's driving them mad because they can't decipher what fuels you anymore. It's not anger. It's not revenge. It's not even hate. It's colder, cleaner. Detachment sharpened into purpose. Clarity disguised as indifference. It's the energy of someone who's already died once and returned without needing anyone's approval. You're not fighting them anymore. Or you're not even acknowledging them as contenders. You've ascended to a frequency they can't tune into, operating on a level beyond their comprehension. And that, your absence from their emotional battlefield, is what's destroying them. They wanted you to be angry because it would validate their story, confirm their version of who you are. But you refused to play the villain in their script. You rewrote the entire narrative. And now they have no idea what to do with that silence. Too emotional, too intense, too unstable. That's the label they wanted to stick on you, the proof they could point to and say, "See, we told you something was wrong with them." But you denied them that satisfaction. You looked at the betrayal, the lies, the sabotage, years of psychological warfare. And instead of collapsing under it, you absorbed it. You processed it, dissected it, turned it into data instead of trauma. You converted every wound into information, every insult into insight, and then you did the one thing they never saw coming. You move forward without needing closure. That's what's breaking their mind right now. You're not waiting for apologies. You're not waiting for them to confess, to feel remorse, or to get hit by karma. You're not sitting around waiting for the universe to balance the scales. You just moved. You rebuilt. You evolved. You became. Meanwhile, they're still stuck in rewind, replaying the moments when they thought they'd broken you, trying to figure out how you're standing taller than ever. They thought your destruction was the final act, when it was merely the intermission. And let's be clear, what terrifies them now isn't your success, your comeback, or your transformation. It's your stability, your calm, your complete indifference to their validation. They threw everything at you. Betrayal meant to break your spirit, losses meant to crush your sense of self. Yet you kept going, not frantically, not desperately, but with an eerie, grounded confidence that suggests you know something they don't. And you do. You know anger fades, but evolution lasts forever. You know revenge is just a distraction, but becoming undeniable is a way of life. You know that screaming into the void gives them screenshots, while building in silence gives them nothing to analyze. You cracked their code. You saw the game for what it was. And instead of flipping the board, you stopped playing altogether. You built your own board, your own rules, your own world. Now they're on the outside watching, confused and panicking. In their group chats, the same questions keep popping up. Did you see what they're doing? How are they so calm? Why aren't they talking about us anymore? Did they really just move on? They can't stop obsessing over your silence because silence from the person they tried to destroy is the loudest sound in the universe. It echoes, it furs, it keeps them up at 3 a.m., scrolling through old messages, hunting for the exact moment when they push too far. But the truth, there was no single moment. It was every lie, every betrayal, every time they chose cruelty over compassion. And you collected it all, not as ammunition for revenge, but as evidence of who never to become. You studied them like a scientist studies a virus. You documented every tactic, every pattern, every manipulative reflex they used when threatened. And now you're immune. You've seen every trick, every shade of fake they can perform. They can't guilt you, gaslight you, or ghost you, expecting to vault back into your life unchallenged. You've evolved past their entire playbook. So now what? Now they're forced to watch the person they buried bloom in real time. And it's not just that you're blooming, it's how you're doing it, silently, powerfully, without ever acknowledging the dirt they threw or the fire they left you in. You grew anyway, and that more than anything is what they can't handle. You're thriving now, posting, creating, building, smiling, living as if they never existed, as if their opinions were never the anchor they believed would keep you chained, as if their absence wasn't a loss, but the permission slip you needed to finally become who you were meant to be. And that's what's driving them insane, because villains need their victims to stay victims. Manipulators need their supply to stay dependent. But you tore up the script. You became the character that wasn't supposed to exist, the plot twist that no one saw coming, the one who survived, evolved, and ascended without giving them the satisfaction of a reaction. In their world, that's not supposed to happen. Power, as they understand it, only exists if you stay beneath it. But you broke that rule. You became living proof that you can be destroyed and still decide not to die. Now, here's where the real power begins. When you were angry, you were still playing their game, nay, on their terms. You were reacting, defending, surviving. Every move you made was a response to theirs. They acted, you responded. They pushed, you reacted. They were the cause, and you were the effect. But the moment you stopped being angry, and the moment you refined that rage into something colder, sharper, and more deliberate, everything flipped. You became the cause. They became the effect. Now they're reacting to you. They're unsettled by your silence, triggered by your peace, haunted by your indifference. Your calmness is their chaos. Your stability is their undoing. Your happiness without them confirms their worst fear, that they were never necessary. Because if you can be this at peace without them, then the power they thought they had was never real. It was borrowed, and only because you allowed it. And now that you've reclaimed your energy, withdrawn your investment from their reality, They're collapsing. Not publicly, not dramatically, but privately, in the quiet moments when they realize you truly don't care anymore. And here's the twist they never saw coming. You didn't stop caring out of hatred. You stopped caring because you outgrew them, because your life expanded beyond the space their betrayal once filled, because you realized the only thing still binding you to them was the mental real estate you were letting them occupy. And you took it back. You didn't do it with vengeance. You didn't do it with anger. You did it with indifference. The kind of indifference that can only come from someone who's been to hell, walked through it, and returned holding the keys to a kingdom the others will never even glimpse. That's what they're facing now, a version of you that doesn't need their approval, doesn't fear their judgment, doesn't even register their existence unless absolutely necessary. You've become a ghost in their story while being fully alive in your own. That's the ultimate power move. Not revenge, not exposure, not even success. The real power is becoming so focused on your purpose that the people who tried to break you turn into background noise, static on a frequency you've outgrown. They wanted you angry because anger is predictable. Angry people make mistakes. Angry people send messages they shouldn't, blow up in public, perform in ways that can be recorded and weaponized. But you didn't give them that. You went silent. And in that silence, you became untouchable. In that stillness, you became unpredictable. And in that calm, controlled void where they expected your chaos, you became their nightmare. Because nothing is more terrifying than someone who should be broken but isn't. Someone who should be bitter but somehow looks free. That's what they can't comprehend. By all logic, you should still be carrying the weight of everything that happened, dragging the memories like chains, haunted by the echoes of what they did. But instead, you move lightly, almost effortlessly. You smile like someone who knows the worst is already behind them. You laugh in a way that feels dangerous to the people who once fed on your pain. You should be broken, but you look liberated. You should be resentful, but you look reborn. And that freedom, that unsettling peace that radiates from you now, is exactly what they never prepared for. Let's talk about what that looks like in real life. Because you've seen it, you've felt it. The way they watch you now has shifted. It's not the old mix of arrogance and condescension anymore. It's not pity. It's something new, sharp, uncomfortable, conflicted. The way their eyes linger on your posts a little too long. The way their messages sound forced when they reach out just to check in. They're not watching you with superiority anymore. They're watching with fear disguised as curiosity, envy buried under fake admiration. They analyze your every word, every image, every movement, like scientists studying a specimen they don't understand. They're watching you the way people watch a storm roll in over calm water, mesmerized, but deeply uneasy because they can sense it. You're building something. You're becoming something. And they know with a kind of quiet horror that whatever it is, they're not part of it. You're not just living without them. You're thriving beyond their reach. You've stepped into a version of yourself that they don't have access to and that terrifies them. You've entered a rare state of existence where your very presence is disruptive. Not because you're trying to cause chaos, but because you're no longer functioning within their rules. Your energy doesn't match the room anymore. It changes it. You walk in, and people can feel it before you even speak. The air shifts. Conversations realign. Eyes track you instinctively, not from intimidation, but from recognition, a deep, almost spiritual acknowledgement that they're standing in the presence of someone who's walked through fire and didn't burn, someone who became the fire. And here's the irony. The same people who ignored you when you were hurting, who found comfort in your weakness, who stayed silent when you needed them most, now they can't look away. They're suddenly fascinated. They replay your transformation like a documentary, trying to find the scene where everything changed. They talk about you in hushed tones. Did you see what they're doing now? How did they bounce back like that? It doesn't make sense. The same mouths that once fed on your downfall are now desperate to explain your rise. But here's the truth. You don't owe them answers. You don't owe them a blueprint, a step-by-step guide to how you rebuilt yourself. You don't owe them closure, clarity, or conversation. Let them wonder. Let them invent stories about how you did it. Let them fill the gaps with their imagination, because no explanation you give will ever make sense to them anyway. They wouldn't understand that what you did can't be replicated, can't be taught, can't be sold as a 5-step process. You survived something that was custom-built to destroy you. You outlasted the storm that was supposed to end your story, and in surviving, you became immune. Immune to manipulation, immune to emotional blackmail, immune to every form of control they used to hold over you. You built an internal immunity, psychological antibodies against their poison. You became resistant to the energy that once drained you. And that's where the real divide forms. You're no longer even in the same dimension. They can't reach you. Not because you've blocked them, but because you've elevated beyond the vibration where their drama exists. They're still trying to understand you from the framework of their limited experience, trying to make sense of your growth through the language of pain they still live in. Meanwhile, you've transcended it. You're already building something beyond their comprehension. While they're analyzing your ashes, you've already become the phoenix. That distance between who you were and who you are now, it's unbridgeable. Not because you're cruel, but because you're focused. You stopped chasing closure and started chasing purpose. You stopped asking why me and started asking what now. You stopped waiting for the universe to make things fair, and you decided to make your own meaning. That's the shift they can't understand. The quiet, disciplined evolution that happens when someone stops fighting the past and starts designing the future. This is what real evolution looks like. Not loud, not performative, not posted for validation. Just steady, relentless, undeniable growth. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. You're not seeking revenge. You're not trying to make them regret what they did. You've simply outgrown the need for their involvement in your narrative. You're not just surviving. You're thriving in public silence. And that's what's eating them alive, because now your very existence is proof. Your life is the testimony. Your peace is the revenge that can't be refuted. How do you fight someone who refuses to fight? How do you hurt someone who's already turned their pain into power? You can't. They can't. You've become the living contradiction to their expectations. You should be bitter, but you're not. You should be broken, but you're whole. You should be haunted, but you're healed. You should be angry, but you're free. And there's nothing more terrifying than watching someone who is supposed to collapse and rise instead. Someone who should have been destroyed, smiling, calm, untouchable. Because now they finally see what you've known all along. Peace isn't the absence of pain. It's mastery over it. And you mastered it so completely that your silence became louder than their noise, your stillness more powerful than their chaos. That's what real victory looks like. They're stuck in checkmate, frozen in a game they no longer understand, trapped in a loop of their own design. The most poetic part? They haven't even realized it yet. They still think they're playing. They still believe they have leverage. But every move they make now, every desperate attempt to reassert control, only exposes more of their insecurity, more of their desperation. If they talk about you, they reveal that you still live rent-free in their mind. If they ignore you, they expose how intimidated they are by the person you've become. If they reach out, they confess that they underestimated your worth. If they stay silent, they admit they know they've been replaced. Every path they take leads to the same conclusion. They lost the game, and they can't find the rule book anymore. There's no clever escape left, no manipulation to reset the balance. The irony is that you didn't even have to win in the traditional sense. You didn't outplay them, you simply stopped playing. You walked away from the board they built, The board where they made the rules, where they decided the stakes, where your pain was their entertainment. You flipped the whole paradigm by refusing to participate. You took your focus, your time, your energy, and built an entirely different game. One that doesn't revolve around them. One where they don't even exist. That's real victory. When you no longer need to defeat them because you've evolved beyond needing the fight at all. And here's the beautiful, brutally honest truth. None of this was about them, not 1 ounce of it. You didn't rebuild yourself to prove a point. You didn't heal to make them jealous. You didn't find peace to make them watch. You did it because you finally understood that you were never meant to orbit someone else's chaos. You were meant to become your own center of gravity. Your healing isn't a weapon. Your peace isn't a performance. Your growth isn't a plot twist written to make them regret their choices. It's simply a byproduct of you finally choosing yourself. The reason it feels like revenge to them is because they've built their entire identity on being needed by you, on having emotional power over you. You were their mirror, their outlet, their fix. They fed off your reactions. They thrived on your pain because it made them feel significant. And now, for the first time, you're not feeding the system. You've cut the power supply. And what happens when something toxic loses its source of energy? It starves. That's what they're going through right now. Withdrawal, the kind that burns. They're feeling the cold void where your energy used to be. They're addicted to the chaos, to the push and pull, to the guarantee that they could poke you and get a reaction. Now they're met with silence. And silence is the one thing their ego can't process. It drives them mad because silence means they've lost relevance. Silence means you don't need to explain anymore. Silence means they don't exist in your narrative, not as the villain, not as the hero, not even as a footnote. So let them scroll through your life from the sidelines. Let them replay every photo, every post, every win, trying to decode it for signs of weakness. They'll look for cracks to exploit, moments they can twist, emotions they can manipulate, but they won't find any. Not because you're flawless, but because you're fortified. You're not fragile anymore. You've become protected, and not by walls, but by wisdom. You've learned boundaries. You've developed standards. You've built a version of yourself that no longer hands out access as charity. That old version of you, the one they could gaslight, guilt trip, and pull back into chaos, doesn't exist anymore. That person is gone, buried, mourned, replaced by someone sharper, someone steadier, someone who doesn't flinch when tested. What stands in that place now is something they awaken but can't control. A version of you they awaken but can't control. You are the outcome of their own actions, the evolution they triggered but never anticipated. You are their consequence. You are the mirror that forces them to see themselves. You are the embodiment of every lesson they refuse to learn. They thought they were writing your downfall, but instead they authored your awakening. They thought they were ending your story, but all they did was help you begin a better one. And now they're left with nothing but reflection, because every time they see you, they see proof. Proof that their power was temporary. Proof that their control was an illusion. Proof that you didn't need them. They needed you. You were their source, their emotional anchor, their validation. And now they're left with their own emptiness, staring into a void that once had your face in it. Meanwhile, you've become the walking example of what real transformation looks like. You are the story people whisper about when they talk about strength. You're the quiet revolution that shows everyone watching that it's possible. Possible to be shattered and still rebuild yourself into something stronger. Possible to be betrayed and still choose peace over vengeance. Possible to be hurt and still not become bitter. And that's what haunts them. The fact that your life now serves as living proof. You've become the case study in resilience they never wanted the world to see. Because you're not the warning anymore, you're the blueprint. You're not the tragedy, you're the testimony. You are the lesson that they accidentally taught. The evidence that healing is louder than any revenge, that peace is sharper than any weapon. You're what happens when destruction doesn't destroy, when someone decides that breaking isn't the end, but the beginning of reconstruction. You didn't just survive, you transformed.